Hello, everyone. We have a very, very special guest today, Jorie Myers from Atlanta Dispatch, as well as the moderator of the Transportation and Logistics Clubhouse, one of the biggest clubhouse about the logistics industry. So, Jorie, welcome today. It's an honor to have you here.
Oh, thank you very much, brother. I'm excited to be here. I'm excited about the growth that you have shown and you've done since you've gotten interested in this industry. So I'm happy to be here, brother.
No, I really appreciate it. Jorie was one of the first mentors I met along this journey. And I remember the early days of just hopping into his clubhouse and to listen to him, interviewing various industry leaders. So it's really an honor to have Jorie here today. But yeah, Jorie. So I again, this is a podcast about the stories of trucking entrepreneurs. And let's dive right into it. Really curious about kind of like what got you into the trucking industry in the first place.
Well, got you, man. Well, look, again, I appreciate being here. Much success to you in the future. But what got me into the trucking industry was, I used to do military contract work out in Afghanistan. Okay, and it was experience that taught me a lot, but I don't need to go back. But it was my first touch of logistics. From there, I ended up opening a company with my brother in Dubai, where we were able to operate more military contracts, logistics, and communications. But I did that for a bit and came back to the States. And I still was on the logistics side, but more the admin side when I worked with Georgia Pacific. I managed their fleet of vehicles, about $25 million worth of vehicles, where all their sales professionals will go out and do their sales calls and all that type of good stuff. But then I had a switch. I'm always been really good with math. Had an opportunity to work with a big law firm. I'm talking about top 40. So it's a high exposure opportunity. I was loving it. Had a great director. So I was doing strategic rate agreements where, coming up with rate structures where everybody felt like they were winning, the law firm as well as the clients. My director got a new job and I got a new director and we did not see eye to eye and I got fired. Got fired from that situation. And I was on the search. I was on the hunt for something new. Like, what could I do to, survive? What could I do? And I was fortunate enough to find an industrial supplier who had a need for a 3PL coordinator. So everything that I'm talking about today and the things that I've been doing over the last 4 or 5 years, it's all happened as a result of me getting that exposure from working with that industrial supplier. What is domestic truckload? What is LTL shipments? All that kind of good stuff. It came after one of the most difficult periods of my life and the things that I had to figure out. But it's definitely put me in the spot where I needed to be.
That's so interesting. That's such an interesting turning point of your life. So I guess fast forward a little bit. I'm curious, like if you can tell everyone what have you built so far? I guess like what's your business and give us an overview in terms of what you're currently working on.
Oh, gotcha. Well, to be honest, man, I have a few companies, but it is that matter of because I am the energy behind everything, you got to put first things first. So I have Humblebee Enterprises. We are an organization that is, we're Hub Zone certified, we're DBE certified, and we're definitely positioned to do military contract work that supports the transportation and logistics industry. Obviously, you see across the chest, Atlanta Dispatch. Atlanta Dispatch is my baby, man. Atlanta Dispatch, I love it. It was an opportunity that was just too sweet to pass up. I had the passion, I had the mindset and the know-how. So Atlanta Dispatch, I service small fleets. My sweet spot is fleets that are about 5 to 10 trucks. So we can do high volume opportunities on a dedicated basis. And obviously, we have the Transportation and Logistics Clubhouse, which I have transitioned into a podcast that has enabled me to interview some of the movers and shakers of the industries, the people who have started doing things at a very high level. They have built efficiencies into their operation, and they've been gracious, kind enough to even want to be on a stage with me to, share the game to the community of transportation and logistics professionals. So that's what I got going on, brother.
That's awesome. Seems like you have a lot going on, and that's very exciting. I just remember, like when I first came across your clubhouse and hopping in, and the energy in the clubhouse, it was super cool to see. I think one of the most interesting things I noticed about your journey that's like very different from a lot of other people I've talked to is that you actually started with the clubhouse, if I remember correctly, before you started Atlanta Dispatch. Um, tell us more about that. I guess like why did you make that decision and how did that come about?
Well, yes, sir. Well, I got invited to join Clubhouse. I want to say maybe October 2020, and I was invited by my wife. My wife is a singer. You know what I mean? So when I got onto Clubhouse, the only people who I was really seeing were folks in the arts. Actors and actresses, singers, poets. Nothing about the community that I was coming from or I was particularly interested in, which was transportation or logistics. So what did I do? I found out the process to create a group just to see what's out there. And, so I said, what's the most Googleable thing I can say is transportation and logistics. Okay, I just
Right.
want I just wanted to build the community. I didn't want people to have to jump through hoops to find it. Just what's the simple way to get people here? And that was a time in my life where I was also looking for a way to transition making money from a system, a set structure, an organization, a corporation, to more so taking more ownership of what I could bring into my household. And, I think that Clubhouse gave me, well, before I even go that far, the reason why I needed that ability to make my own money was because when COVID hit in March of 2020, I had some of the best drivers you can imagine that I was dispatching for. I mean, 13 solid folks, very professional. I've never ever had an opportunity to work with extreme professionals like I did, and they got fired. They got fired because nobody understood what the real ramifications, the reverberations of what COVID was going to do. So they wanted to cut where they could. So they fired my drivers, and my purpose got internal. Like I got repurposed. I was doing more things internal, running more so of the warehouse scene versus the domestic truckload scene, which was cool. I got to learn a lot about, warehouse management, which I'm very grateful for because supply chain, everything is tied in together. Like, so you learn one part, you can better understand another part. But fast forward, I was still looking for a way to control my own income, my own flow, and being able to see Clubhouse as what it was. I knew that that's where I actually got the idea of independent dispatch agencies. I didn't even know you could
Mhm.
do it by yourself. I still
Oh,
thought it was
really?
just yeah, I didn't know. I had no idea. It was through Clubhouse that I found out that people were actually doing it and doing it well. And I was like, okay, well, let me see how I can learn more so that I can apply the skills I already have. But when I do it in such a way that I'm adding value to people. And as you have found out through your journey thus far, everything is relationships. It's relationships. It's relationships. And so I sat back. I put the transportation and logistics clubhouse together to learn. I said, hey guys, this is what my goal is. I want to learn how to do this as an entrepreneur. You're doing it. Do you mind giving me some time so that we can talk about it and maybe other people can learn something too? And it caught fire. People were very, very willing to share, and that's the beauty of I want to say the transportation industry. Although it's siloed, people are willing to help other folks. You just got to be in the right place at the right time. So yeah, that's how Clubhouse got started. That's how I learned about independent dispatch agencies, and that's how I built the confidence by interviewing people who were doing it well, to actually open Atlanta Dispatch.
That's awesome. That's an awesome story. For the audiences that are not familiar with Clubhouse, Clubhouse is a real time kind of like a radio style talk room, conversation room where you can hop into like conversations and listen to other people talk. And you can contribute to the conversation, and that is a platform that Jory has built transportation logistics room on top of. So a bit background about Clubhouse. Jory, back to your story. I think it's super interesting that like you kind of like started, like with the audience, and again, like I kind of emulated your journey in terms of, hey, like let me try to kind of start building an audience before I actually build a business. I think this is actually a really fascinating way of like trying to start a business, leveraging social media and the distribution that social media has these days. I think this is something that I've come to learn that, hey, like maybe more people should use this method to like build their business. I'm curious, how has your result of being a moderator of the transportation logistics clubhouse affected the start of your Atlanta dispatch business? Because I'm sure these two are probably pretty there's probably some good synergy between these two businesses. So yeah, I'm really curious about like how has that like affected Atlanta Dispatch?
Right. Great question. So I think that it's affected it in a great way. In a great way. I mean, the fact is, I was kind of being pushed to do my own thing because I had so much support. People really wanted to see me win, folks who I built organic, genuine relationships with. And, there's no shortcut in building relationships. It's not. And as you'll know, if you're not in transportation already, folks who might listen to this, everything is done via relationship. That load that's going to get moved, they're going to give it to somebody they have a relationship first rather than putting it on a load board. Okay. And if we're talking about rates, well, if they trust somebody enough, they're willing to pay the premium on the price so that they have peace of mind. So it's all relationships, the way in which everything moves within transportation and logistics. So my there's definitely synergy between what I got going on with Atlanta Dispatch and Transportation and Logistics Clubhouse. High paying lanes, exposure to more fleets of carriers who want my services. All these things kind of go in tandem. So yeah, I do think that people who leverage, well, not just leverage social media. One, people who get educated on how to do the job first, and lean into that education side, and then get people a part of their journey and their growth, will yield things in the long term. But just because you have a huge following, but you're not doing right, that don't mean that it's going to go well for you. Okay, I mean, I'll just leave that at that.
Obviously, right now the transportation logistic clubhouse has grown pretty big. I think it has, last time I checked, has like 26,000 followers. Is that the right number?
Yeah, it's something like that. It's in that. It's definitely in that range.
So obviously, you've gathered quite the following for yourself, and for people that are maybe considering this approach in terms of, hey, like leveraging social media to build their business or building an audience first. Do you have any in terms of like specific advice or lesson learned from the early days of building this that people
Uh,
can maybe consider?
yes, education first, because one, if you're educated, when people come to you for advice, you're going to be able to really give them some advice from the gut, from the I know this is going to help them. But if you're trying to fabricate things on the spot, one, you're going to steer people wrong, and you're not going to have a good name after those people implement that advice. So, if you're going to go the social route, you got to lean on education. You got to stay on integrity. Those are the two things. Educating people first, and just make sure that you're moving with integrity. Because if we're talking about we're in a social setting where people kind of get canceled all the time. So if you're able to do right by people and feed positivity into them, that's what you're going to get. But if you're just looking for the quick money, it's not going to work either way. So, yeah, integrity, education, and what else? Would I say anything else would make a trifecta? Um, I recently had Trey Griggs on my podcast, and he, just talking about building a brand. He just said you got to stick to your core values. Who are you at the end of the day? Because that's what's gonna give you the most natural energy when you're operating out of it. So don't change who you are. Just you got to think about what do you truly want, and if that's in alignment with your core values. You know what I mean? So. You just gotta align yourself. That's it.
Appreciate it, brother. I think just like any, just like building any business, building anything, I think from the start, yeah, I think that the initial starting is probably the hardest, of that. I guess like I'm curious, like from your experience of, building the transportation logistics clubhouse, was it just like, you started a clubhouse and people were just like, they were swarming in, or what were the like the very, very early days? Like, because like, talking from my personal perspective as a creator, I think there's sometimes like the feeling of like, I'm just like creating content into the void. Nobody's really watching. Am I really, like spending my time well? I think just like feeling self-conscious of it, and maybe a little insecure about like kind of like that feeling of like nobody really cares about what I'm trying to do. I'm curious, yeah, what were like kind of like the early days for you, or was it like quite different for you?
Oh no, it was very similar. It was very similar. And you know the style of what Clubhouse is audio. You see people that enter the room, so it was me by myself. It was just me, and then my wife was just my girlfriend at the time was then just saying, I kind of feel bad for this guy. Let me go into the room with him. So it was me and my significant other, and we were having conversations about nothing. Okay, but when it really started to catch on is when I started seeing other rooms and being able to go in other rooms and contribute, and then building, kind of, it was very early, but little relationships that garnered the respect and the reciprocation. But I'm not gonna lie to you. I said this plenty of times, but it was once I held a discussion. I don't know what it was about, but it was about domestic truckload and brokering or something like that. But Tristan of the leading ladies of logistics entered the room, and because she had been operating for so long and she had so much game, I think that it gave my platform a lot of credibility. And it's because of, I want to say that's one of the biggest turning points in my experience of going from, man, we're barely getting 20 people in the room to, people are coming in here consistently because they're expecting to get some value. So shout out to Tristan of Leading Ladies of Logistics. I truly appreciate you.
Um, that's an incredible story, and I'm really curious. From the early days when no one was coming in, what was motivating you to keep going when it was just you and your wife talking shop in like an internet radio room? Why did you keep going? Why were you just like, what, screw this. I don't want to do this anymore.
Hey man, I didn't want to get fired again. And if I needed to make money, I needed to learn how to make money in a professional entrepreneurial fashion. There was no other way for me. So if I have, maybe I'm some. My wife says, Jorie, when you put your mind to something, you are determined to do it. You're consistent, and I just wonder how you're able to do it. She asked me this last week, earlier this week, and I don't know. It's just when I want something and I see the value, it doesn't necessarily matter if I'm not getting that initial, what is that? Is that delayed gratification? I don't need the immediate gratification. It's going to come. It's going to come, and I've learned that as long as I stay diligent and keep putting one foot in front of the other towards my goals, things are going to happen. It's going to happen. So, are you going to be in a position and ready for it when it does happen? So yeah, it was all good. I was never dismayed at all.
That's awesome. Shifting gears a little bit, would love to talk a bit more about Atlanta Dispatch too. Obviously, that is your bread and butter right now. I think transportation logistics really kind of gave you a launching pad to like launch this business. Yeah, would love to hear a bit more. Kind of like about where it's at right now. How many like you mentioned you're working with like various trucking fleets, and how's the business going? How I guess like how many trucks are you dispatching? If there's anything you can share to give the audience like a kind of like the scale of the business right now. Obviously we still understand it's early days. I think you've only been operating for like 2 years. Is that correct?
Less than 2 years.
Oh,
Less than 2 years. But so the early days with Atlanta Dispatch, man, I was still working two W-2s. So I was very, very busy, working a full-time job, working a part-time job, and building Atlanta Dispatch. And it was some very, very difficult days to start because with my previous job that I learned how to do dispatching. I got quite accustomed to dispatching drive-ins, semis with 53-foot drive-ins. But my first client happened to be somebody that I met at a small business expo years before, but they had box trucks. So I'm dispatching box trucks for the very first time, and it was a punch in the gut. It was completely different. It was hard. It wasn't as easy as going on the load board and the freight jumping at you. No, you had to go get it. So my business started as more servicing box trucks, and I'm very happy that I did that because it taught me so many things about resilience and grind and grit and just the whole attitude of you got to go get it, especially with building relationships with people who have the freight that you need. So started with box trucks. I probably have about 30 or so carriers signed up,
wow.
and I want to say some of them have one vehicle, some of them have 7, 8 vehicles. But don't get it twisted, guys. I want you to know as a dispatch company, you have control of your operation. You can say, hey man, if I'm dispatching for you, I want you to exclusively use me. Or you can say, hey man, you can dispatch your own stuff if you want to. I'm more of the second because I want to bring value to people's organizations, to their operations. And if they have the opportunity to do something that, is great for them in the meantime, feel free. There is no pressure over here. Just come back to me when you're in my area and I'll hook you up with some of that high volume, high paying freight. So, yeah, that's the scale of the company. That's where I'm at. And, it was difficult to build something like that, but it wasn't. But I was having fun doing it. Okay, like I was making these strides towards my goals, and I was noticing like as I was doing more and more, I was seeing more and more, like more and more results. So it became less like work and more like Jory, you're on to something. How can you limit your distractions in other places so that you can put your time and attention on this thing here that's going to yield in the long haul? So yeah, it was fun, man. But I'm not sure if you asked, but some of the difficulties that someone might kind of like feel when they're building their company, I say is getting it to a point where it's scalable, meaning do you have systems in place where people can just walk right into your organization and know what they need to do? Because if you don't, it's going to require you to do it, and you just got to say, do you want to build that type of material, those processes and procedures, the statements about those, like while you're doing it the first go around, or do you want to wait till you got 30 processes that you got to document? So if you're good at documentation, you will be able to avoid some of the pitfalls that I had to overcome when I was bringing people onto my organization to work on my behalf. So yeah, I say that was what Atlanta Dispatch was when it started.
That's super interesting. That's actually one of the questions I have for you, which is What was something that you did, during the process of growing Atlanta Dispatch that was really, really beneficial to the company? That I guess like yeah, what were some decisions that you made about, hey, like this is how I'm gonna do things that really kind of like accelerated, your business. Do you recall maybe like a decision like that has like a major impact?
Definitely. It was that decision where I said, hey, I don't need to be the person to get you every single load. If you are the person, if you have opportunities elsewhere, go ahead. I have no ego here. Okay. Again, I just want to bring value. So the decision to say, hey, I'm going to operate strictly out of the places where I have an abundance of high volume freight, that's where I'm going to put my attention versus, really being on a load board for a long periods of time, because at the end of the day, you know, it's about your time. Your time is very valuable. Where you can put your attention is very, very valuable. So me making the decision to, um, you know, let my ego go to say that I need to be able to get every single load for every single truck for every single carrier to say, well, you know what? It's about working smarter, learning this system over here and, maximizing this system before going to the next situation. Because again, it's all about relationships. If you're on this in the spot market nonstop, it's more transactional. But if you're able to grow and see what a brokerage needs, you're able to, then provide more value and learn more about their operation. And then it's no longer transactional. At that point, you guys are just kind of extensions of one another, and that's how you're the first dispatcher or the first carrier that they'll call to offer a load where you don't even have to look for it. They're bringing it to you. Okay. So that was the biggest decision shift in my operation style that freed up a lot more of my time, but also allowed me to really maximize the relationships I already had.
That is super interesting because we've talked about this. I've also tried my hands on dispatching a little bit myself. I think there's definitely a big challenge in terms of trying to like chase the low boards and find like kind of like be the only dispatcher for a given carrier. So I think the decision of hey, like rather than chasing kind of like every single low on the low board, I would work to my advantage and have the best lows come to me. I think that is super interesting. I can definitely see how like that gave you like a pretty big strategic lift with your business. And I think another thing I'm super curious about is with obviously with transportation logistics, that probably gave you like a pretty big boost in terms of brand recognition and potential like clients for Atlanta Dispatch. But um, was there were there any like but I'm sure like things were not all always like smooth sailing. I'm sure. I'm curious if there were any like particular memories of like really really challenging moments when you're building Atlanta Dispatch that where you were just like, oh wow, that moment was hard, and kind of looking back at it and reflecting on that. I'm curious if there are any specific memories like that, like tough moments like that you reminisce.
Yeah, but again, man, like I look at difficult moments in my past a lot differently now. I used to say, "Oh man, woe is me," and get real, down about it. But now I use it as fuel. It feels great to have overcome certain things. But a challenging moment within my operation with Atlanta Dispatch, I say is I told you I was working two W-2s, working, building Atlanta Dispatch, and the proof of concept worked, obviously. But the things happened that I needed to happen for me to say, I'm going to do Atlanta Dispatch full time. I'm going to do it. So I quit my W-2s, and the very first day of me needing to work Atlanta Dispatch full time, I had COVID. I had COVID, bro. I had COVID and I was no good. I'm talking about I had this drive, obviously, that said, Jory, you need to work. You need to work. You need to do it. You got this stuff to do. You got these people depending on you. You got to do it. And it was very, very difficult for me to accept the fact that I was not in a spot where I could do it. I had to rest. And the fact that I was trying to fight through it for, so long, probably like 3 days of me still trying to like work like nothing was going on. It just prolonged my symptoms, and eventually I had to tap out. So that was the biggest difficult thing for me, was realizing that I am human, and although I have the drive mentally, sometimes I just can't. I just had to accept the fact that I I have certain limitations, and because of that, I had to. That was tough for me to come to grips with. It was, but it was necessary for me to like be where I am now, and understanding how important a team is and systems are, and not putting yourself in a spot where it's all you. You know what I mean? Having other people that can, help you is all is you need it. Put it like that. You need it.
Absolutely. Jory, looking back, if you were to start everything, from the ground up again, like just go through the exercise with me. If you were to do it again, having all the knowledge that you have today, what would you do differently?
What would I do differently? Man, I think I still go to building a social platform first, because that really did give me it gave me a lot of support, man. And encouragement is so huge in whatever you're doing. Having people want to be a part of the journey and support you and push you and motivate you, and got to do that. I will start with box trucks, because again, without having to go through that grind, I wouldn't have made so many of the connections that I have today that are just so beautiful in my life. And I say I probably would focus more on high volume opportunities earlier, because at the end of the day, it's going to get moved. And uh, of all people, this brother, Magic Johnson, said, look, he said this, and it really stuck out to me. He said, the same amount of time and attention goes into making $100 million deal that goes into making the $1 million deal. So I'd rather put my time in something that is going to be more rewarding versus, $1 million is all right, but if I'm going to put that same amount of time and I can get 100 million, I think I'm gonna try to do that. So yeah, that's what I do. Um, Lastly, I would have probably done this thing that I'm doing right now a little bit earlier. I've always been a go-to person. People feel they can ask questions on how to become a dispatcher, and because of that, and because of me going through my whole entire journey, I've written a book. I've written a book now on the fundamentals of dispatching. So I think I would have put more time into documenting my processes up front. But again, I'm writing this book. It's about to be edited, about to be published. So the fact is, I would have done that. No, I don't think I would have changed anything. This is this is perfect. This is giving me exactly the knowledge I needed to have, exactly when I needed to have it.
That's awesome. Can you tell us a bit more about that book? Yeah, what? Obviously, it sounds like it's crystallization of your dispatching, and your journey of learnings. Yeah, can you just tell us a bit more?
Yeah, definitely, definitely. So look, I mean, I worked for a corporation. I learned dispatching. I did it, and even when I became a dispatcher, independent dispatch agency, I still went to training courses. Okay, I still went to training courses to learn other skills to bring onto what I got going on. But there is something that I did realize about dispatch training. Like, there's so much to dispatching that it's kind of it's impossible to learn all of it within a 5 hour session, 2 5 hour sessions. It's impossible. So this book right here was developed so that the person who is interested in dispatching can get the foundational knowledge, A to Z foundational knowledge. And then once you read and have that, you can go to those trainings and you can say, all right, I'm here present. Now I can really take in this information on them telling me how to navigate a load board, or them saying, hey, this is the best place to get this type of freight. But if it's all coming at you, you're drinking from a fire hydrant, and it's challenging to retain all that information in a 5-hour dispatch training course. So I wanted to create this right here, this product, to make sure that people did have a resource where they can kind of go back to, even when they're in the operation, to just say, what would be the right step to do at this point? So that's the reason why I created it. And, I'm very excited about it.
When is it coming out, and how can people find it?
Like I said, I'm sending it to the editor this weekend. They've signed the NDA, so have it over to them today. I'd imagine it's going to be published by October, and I'm going to have it on, Amazon, but I think I'm going to have it on transportation and logistics.club too, which is the site for all of my podcasts with, my guests. So I'm having it on both of those places.
Nice, awesome. Well, people, stay tuned. Jory, I've another question for you that I think it actually comes up a lot. From carriers I talk to. I think one of the things that you mentioned earlier was, if you were to look back, I think one of the things you might have done slightly differently is start to focus on higher volume, loads and customers a little sooner. I think that is typically a big challenge for carriers that are, kind of like ramping up. They start with like low boards, but how do they actually kind of like make the transition from, like kind of like the one-off spot market, lows to the high volume deals that you are talking about? Do you have any specific advice or experiences that could maybe inform others that they're, while when they're, trying to make that transition into like higher volume deals as well?
Yeah. I mean, it's not that you can't get those off of the load board. You just got to change the conversation when you do call somebody on the load board. Let's just say you're calling about a particular load, and that load, you find out that it's covered or the details are a little bit off from what you really want. Well, that's a whole time for you to interact with a broker, to see, what else do you have? You know what I mean? So it's really, you have to be inquisitive. You have to be very, very inquisitive, and got to be unashamed to ask questions. And so it's about changing those conversations that you have once you do have that audience, to see how you can learn more about their other opportunities. But if you're calling and you're saying, I'm looking for this load that's going from Atlanta to Philly, and they say, oh, it's covered, and you're like, okay, thank you, bye. Well, there could have been so much more that happened in that conversation. So once you get comfortable, kind of like controlling the conversation with the broker, and filling them out, you'll be able to get in those conversations that we're talking about right here. And on top of that, go to LinkedIn. A lot of decision makers from the transportation and logistics industries are on LinkedIn. So do your research, find out who makes some of those decisions, slide in their inbox, or do something where you make yourself known to them for good things. Maybe they keep they're someone that does a lot of posting on LinkedIn. Comment on their stuff, like their stuff, support their stuff, share their stuff. They'll see you eventually. But yeah, it's just about changing the conversation. Got to be very specific with what you want.
Yeah, it seems like, it's kind of like it fits into a broader theme of, transportation. A lot of it is really about, building relationships, and like sounds like your, strategy of having the conversation in addition to, just asking for the low, but as well as, going to like other social platforms like LinkedIn and engage with them. That all kind of comes back to, building stronger relationships. So, when push comes to shove, you will be someone that they think about.
Yes, sir. Relationships. That's the number one currency in this game.
I guess on the topic of relationship, I think one of the things that that I want to ask you is, Was there a particular mentor that you have met along the way that was really influential to your journey? Like again, I think transportation. A lot of it is about relationships. I think it's also about the people that you meet. So I'm curious if there were, I think you, to be honest with you, I think you are one of those people for me. As I was getting started, being able to like talk to you, listen to you interview other people, that has really impacted my way of starting the business. So I'm curious, like for you, were there any particular people like that for you during your journey?
I say so. I definitely would. I mean, I have multiple though. You know what I mean? If I'm being real about it, I have multiple people who I feel like have poured into me and taught me so many things. It'll start with some of the folks I was even working with while I was, back in the day. I didn't even know, like D Malone. She works for Epps Logistics. She's a broker. Christy Wiggins. She's a broker. You know what I mean? Jamira Williams, we started at the exact same time actually, the same time I started the Transportation and Logistics Clubhouse, she has started her brokerage and she has grown crazy. She has a trucking business. She's a broker. She does all of the container moves in Savannah. So I'm seeing the growth of these people. And then people like DeMarco. DeMarco owns Metromax, which is a huge dispatching company. So just being able to talk to DeMarco has been a beautiful thing. Tank Johnson, he played football, but he's built a huge brokerage and carrier. So just having that ability to communicate with these fellas, and when it comes to Transportation and Logistics Clubhouse, there's no way I can not mention Ramel Watley of Truck and Hustle. This guy he's revolutionized things. He's brought the culture to transportation, to logistics, and they've all been very very supportive and welcoming of me. So yeah, I've learned gain from a lot of people, man. Just a lot. I'm still thinking like I'm pretty sure there's about 15, 20 other people that I can mention. So yeah, a lot of folks.
That's awesome. I think part of the fun is really getting to meet other really smart people and learn from them. So I'm really grateful for you to have met you and for you to be on the podcast today. And here's my final question of the day. And this is a question I really like, and this is from my favorite podcast. How I built this. This is typically kind of like their closing question too. But Jory, looking back at your experience, how much, given the current success that you have, how much of it would you attribute to luck and how much would you attribute it to hard work?
That's a good question. It's kind of challenging to answer though because we're talking about hindsight. What contributed to what? Well, I just know this: when you set your intention, and your intention is pure, I feel like things kind of come together for you. You know what I mean? I do feel like things come together when you set your intention and you do everything in that path. So I say that hard work. There's no substitute for hard work. There's no substitute because even if you only get a connection out of going above and beyond and beyond and beyond and beyond, now you've met somebody that only you met because you went that extra mile. You know what I mean? Um, but at the same time, I'm also of the mindset that if you want something and you are clear in that vision, that it can manifest. So I feel like I'm in the middle. Things have happened immediately when I was sure that it could happen, that I wanted it, and it was going to happen. Happened immediately, very very crisply. But there's other stuff that does take more dedication to build. So I'm in the middle. I'm in the middle.
I see. Well, thank you so much for your time today. It's been a pleasure chatting with you and listening to your story, and I'm so happy we're able to share it with the broader audience. But yeah, thanks again for coming by today. Really appreciate you, brother.
Anytime, man. And again, I'm here to help. I'm here to support you. So, good luck to you and your career, especially with TikTok. Everybody, you got to follow this guy on TikTok.
Appreciate you, brother. All right, man. You have a good rest of your day. I'll talk to you soon.
All right, bro.